Hello and welcome to Day Before Disclosure, the YouTube channel that takes an active part in the search for truth. My name is Jay, and I am very excited to kick off this inaugural video on this new YouTube channel that, as the opening line suggests, I'm really hoping that this channel becomes more than just the usual regurgitation of information. I believe it's important to take an active part in the search for truth and the search for all things that are within the natural realm of reality versus a lot of the misinformation that's pushed onto us. And I believe it's important. It's definitely important to push stories out there, of course, and get it out there for people to see and to hear and react to. But I also believe it's important to take an active part in the search for truth and the effort for disclosure, towards disclosure. So that's really what my hope is to enlist all of your help to actively push the efforts and not just provide the usual CGI type garbage. I really want this channel to be community oriented. Everybody, all hands on deck type of an approach, and let's really get some activism behind a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the talk. So again, in this inaugural video, I'm very much looking forward to getting to know each one of you, and very much look forward to, again, this collaborative effort. So I wanted to kick off by just doing a brief story about some aerial phenomenon, unidentified phenomenon in West Texas in a town called Lubbock, which is the home of Texas Tech University, which used to be a Texas Technological College years ago. But this is near and dear to my heart because I actually attended Texas Tech University. I lived out in West Texas for a number of years and attended the university and actually saw my first, and I believe my only, I say I believe, but it was a very clear instance of an unidentified flying object that I saw when I was in my early 20s, when I was in college. I know that the Midwest is a hotbed, as we all know, right? Groom Lake and all of the military and the Air Force in particular, NASA. There's a lot of test equipment that is tested out in the Midwest in sort of no man's land, and it's done by design. Of course, it's done on purpose, away from the eye of the public. But you can't keep everything away from the eye of the public. So part of the responsibility is on us to kind of distinguish whether or not we're witnessing aerial phenomena that is DoD related, or that is actually breaking the laws of nature and physics as we've come to know it. And we know when we're met with something that is unusual, and that it's not a bird or a weather balloon. We know when we see something that is highly suspect and highly unusual, and such was the case with me when I lived in Lubbock, Texas, and I spotted a zipping singular aircraft that wasn't low flying. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't a drone. It was back around 2000 time frame. And this was something that was really very much breaking the laws of what I know to be physically possible. Zipping and flying at high rates of speed, but zipping at angles that are just impossible angles to fly at. So that was my story, my first encounter with an unidentified flying object out in the middle of West Texas, out in Lubbock. This story also takes place in West Texas in the year 1951 on several different nights between late August and early September 1951. The Lubbock Lights phenomenon was known as an unusual formation of lights seen over the city of Lubbock, Texas. They were investigated by the U.S. Air Force in 1951 as well, and we'll get into how Project Blue Book, if for anybody who doesn't know what Project Blue Book is, probably been living under a rock, but this was around one of the first instances of the newly found Project Blue Book that actually investigated this phenomenon. And of course, the Air Force came up with a couple different explanations, somewhat bogus explanations, to explain away, what people were saying. And what really makes this case so unusual and so interesting and unique is the level, the caliber of professionalism in the people who identified these objects. They were heads of department at the university, professors. One was a German professor, one was a chemical engineer, a petroleum engineer, head of the college journalism department. So these were, very reputable people in respect to their collegiate careers, and could not just be discounted as, some silly college kids or locals. So ultimately, the first instance was reported by 3 different college professors who had noticed lights, 20 to 30 bright lights up in the sky, and noticed the lights flying overhead at a very high rate of speed, and had noticed the lights at cloud coverage was around 2,000 feet, and ended up traveling what they guessed to around 600 miles per hour, given the level of the aircraft, and guessing at the rate of speed that it was flying relative to its height, then obviously kind of coming up with an idea of how fast they were flying. 600 miles per hour. Okay, so even if it's not 600 miles per hour, it is at such a high rate of speed that the bird explanation is just not possible. But ultimately, the Air Force did send out an investigator, a Lieutenant Ruppelt, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, was sent out by the Air Force and actually investigated this phenomenon, and came to the conclusion that while they initially thought it was the reflection of a series of birds and reflecting off their belly, because it was seen at night, these very bright lights, and that ultimately, the initial thought was that it was a reflection off of the belly of these birds. What the Air Force ultimately concluded was, okay, well, it wasn't birds, but at the same time, it wasn't aircraft either, and we really can't talk anymore about it, which then leads you to believe, okay, well, then it is some sort of experimental aircraft. But again, one of the reasons that I really like these old stories back in the 50s and before CGI and drones and modern technology is really, there just wasn't much to go on in terms of technology. It's one thing to see an aircraft fly at a high rate of speed, right? It's another thing to see an aircraft fly at a high rate of speed, but doing so in a manner that cuts and zigs and zags and weaves in a way that is just not possible at that high rate of speed. Flying in a straight line at a high rate of speed, or even banking or diving, or ascending at a high rate of speed, that's one thing. Stopping on a dime and changing positions, 90-degree angles, that is a whole other type of physics that we don't have any, not even in the mainstream, in the unclassified area, do we see anything even remotely similar to that. So it's not even like it's an acceleration of technology that we've all seen. It's truly, wholly undiscovered technology. It's things that are just not normal. And anybody who witnesses these things, as I did in my 20s, that you're witnessing something that just isn't normal. It's not normal. It's not something you've ever seen before. In fact, one of the quotes given by one of the professors who saw it was, quote, "It gave us all an extremely eerie feeling," end quote. And again, just anybody who's seen this, if you've witnessed something like this and you've kind of made the hair stand up on the back of your neck in a sense where you're like, this isn't normal. This is nobody can tell me that what I'm witnessing here, what I'm seeing here is something that's normal, because it's just not normal. It's not human. It's not man-made. It's beyond anything that It breaks the laws of physics such as we know it. Almost like a computer simulation and hacks within a game or within a simulation, right? Where you've got the source code and you're able to manipulate it. That's kind of the way this stuff seems. It's just so absolutely unnatural. But the Lubbock Lights phenomenon, 1951, You can see pictures. You can go out and and find the pictures online. They are quite amazing. In 1951, the pictures ultimately made national headlines. It was first published in the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, and then went on to be printed in Life magazine, and then made the circulation nationwide and around the world. Were taken by a Carl Hart Jr., who was a freshman at Texas Tech. And they did all kinds of testing of the photos to make sure that they were the real deal. Lieutenant Edward Ruppelt, who was, again, the supervisor of the Air Force's Project Blue Book, he actually ended up writing a book to say that, hey, again, the pictures were never proved to be a hoax. There was a fair amount of confidence that these pictures were good pictures, and they went on to sort of back up the evidence of these very reputable men and women who were employees of the university who saw the aerial phenomenon. So let me know what you think. Again, this is just a brief video on a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart, given my own experience out in West Texas and having seen myself, my own experience seeing an unidentified flying object at a very high rate of speed and making all kinds of maneuvers physically that should not be possible. But just wanted to get on and post a video, let the YouTube world know that this channel is out here. I very much want to get your feedback, get your your pictures, your videos, your thoughts for video ideas, and leave those in the comments below. Tweet me pictures, any information that you have on Twitter @daydisclosure. @daydisclosure. I'll have that in the information section below so that you can find me on Twitter and get me your information. But again, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm hoping very much that this is a collaborative type of a channel. My hope is that this channel brings a lot of us together and that we're able to really work on this stuff together and continue the efforts of so many people like Dr. Stephen Greer and others in this field of research that are really out there beyond just the microphone and the computer and the YouTube videos, and they're really trying to actively contribute and use their voice and their audience to actually further the movement and further towards disclosure, versus just sort of shooting and posting videos and throwing it up on YouTube. So that's my hope here with this channel. Stay tuned and see you back in the next video. Thanks.